Hi everyone, it's Dave from Doctors of Running, and today I want to do a comparison video looking at the ASICS Sonicblast and the ASICS Novablast 5. So I wanted to make this video mainly because the ASICS Sonicblast is built from the Novablast. ASICS took some of the feedback that they got from the Novablast and wanted to inject that into the Sonicblast, mainly to make a little bit of a speedier, more lively version of the Novablast, something that's a little bit more responsive and better traction, etc. So some of the feedback they got, they wanted to implement it here. It almost sounds like a discontinuation of the line of the Novablast, but that's not the case. They're just kind of making a speedier version, or at least trying to. So we'll go into some of the similarities and the differences, but starting off, I do want to start with specifications. So the ASICS Sonicblast comes in higher in stack height at 46 millimeters of stack in the heel in men's size 9, 45 millimeters of stack in the heel in women's size 8, and they are both an 8 millimeter drop platform, so you can look at about 38 millimeters of stack in the forefoot and 37 millimeters of stack in the forefoot, respectively. Weight is pretty darn good. It comes in right around 9 ounces in men's size 9. That's 255 grams at the sample size. And one kind of fun tidbit about that is the Novablast has the same exact weight and same specs. I cross-referenced it with my pairs before making the videos. I'm a men's 9.5, but it checked out just a little bit over that. There are some differences in how the shoes ride, but we'll get into that in a second. The new midsole here is going to be Flight Foam Turbo Squared. It is going to be an ATPU-based midsole, more resilient, lighter. Some of the ways they can get this shoe as light as it is while still having more foam. Very, very bouncy foam, but it's going to be a little bit more resilient than, or it's going to not as compliant, let's say, as Flight Foam Leap, the ATPU that we are seeing in the racing models. So this is meant to be a little bit more training specific and to just be a little bit more durable and kind of hold its structure a little bit better. And if I was to describe Flight Foam Squared, Turbo Squared, it feels similar to Flight Foam Turbo Plus, but it's a little bit more compliant and it is more bouncy. So the experience you get from the Superblast, it is different than you would get in this new Flight Foam Turbo Squared midsole. This one has a little bit more give, but it still holds its structure pretty well. It's just a lot more bouncy. One other thing with the Sonicblast too is they actually put a plate in it. They're calling it an Astro plate. It's just a P-Bax plate. It's 3/4 length, so it starts right around there, and then it spoons up to the forefoot with a pretty sharp toe spring. So they really wanted you to have a snappy and kind of quick rolling forefoot. I do think that experience gets across in the Sonicblast. Specifications for the Novablast, it's 41.5 millimeters of stack in the heel and 40.5 millimeters of stack in the heel. So again, they're doing the 1 millimeter difference between men's size 9 and women's size 8. Weight is the same, 8 millimeter drop platform as well. So, and then the Novablast uses Flight Foam Blast Max and no plate. And then they use kind of a normal outsole rubber. And so some of the complaints for the Novablast was that the traction wasn't the greatest in slick conditions, so they put a high abrasion ASICS grip outsole. I will say it does feel more tacky, and it just grips that ground a little bit better than the Novablast did. So I think that did come across, so that experience is good. When we look at upper and fit, the Sonicblast just feels a little bit more performance oriented while still being training friendly. And what I mean by that is it just feels a little bit more airy. The jacquard mesh upper, it's thinner, but it breathes really well. It does have a similar padded tongue as the Novablast. And I feel like the lockdown's pretty good. You have a kind of a semi-rigid heel counter, not as much padding. You know, everything about this feels like it's a little bit more streamlined to get that weight down for how high up it is. But I felt like the lockdown was good and the upper was comfortable. The ASICS Novablast, the upper did feel a little bit more plush. You can even just see on the heel collar there's a lot more padding. Width and dimension wise, they are pretty similar. I'd say they're about normal width through the heel and midfoot, slightly wide in the forefoot, nothing too crazy there. Volume's pretty good too. There's plenty of space for swelling and foot accommodation as well. So I was happy about that, but I felt like the more training friendly upper is going to be the Novablast 5. It just feels a little bit more plush, a little bit softer on the foot. And not that the Sonicblast doesn't feel soft on the foot, it just feels a little bit thinner and a little more airy. And the perforations are noticeable and they're kind of cool. They kind of, aesthetically, it looks pretty sweet. When we look at the ride, now this is where things get interesting because I think with the Sonicblast, this is a shoe that likes to go fast. I really like it for up-tempo work. I can totally see myself using it for a up-tempo long run or in a marathon build to help on building some of that endurance and just not losing that snap in your feet. When we look at the transitions though, at slower paces, now the heel bevel's pretty similar in terms of size to the Novablast. I'll hold them up right next to each other here. But because there's a lot more foam and there's that plate that's 3/4 of a length, it almost feels rigid through that midfoot, and it can be a little slappy coming off of the heel. Now when you're going at a faster pace, you kind of compress into it real quick and just snap off that forefoot, and so you have kind of a trampoline effect that comes off of the midfoot and forefoot, and it just rolls off that forefoot really well. So from kind of the midfoot forward, it feels great. So if you're kind of landing a little bit more forward, it might work for you on easy days too. I just felt like the transitions were a little bit jarring. I almost wish, with how much foam is on here, that they just biased that bevel a little bit more laterally, or just made it a little bit larger. The other thing is, I feel like the shoe could probably be a half length plate versus a 3/4 length plate, and that might make that transition a little bit smoother from the heel to the midfoot as well. But as far as the goal of having that bouncy, snappy forefoot, they definitely got that here. And it doesn't feel unstable either for being at 45 millimeters of stack. So I think they did a good job with the shoe, but I think there are some refinements that you could make through the heel and the midfoot. Whereas in the Novablast, it does feel very balanced. This is kind of like that versatile trainer that everyone's been using. Blast Max feels just a little bit more compliant, almost like a little softer on the foot, but it doesn't quite have that spring that you get out of the Flight Foam Turbo Squared. So that's kind of the big noticeable difference, but with no plate, a little bit more balanced geometry. And then the sidewalls are a little bit taller. I don't notice that as much between the models, but in the Novablast, it's a little bit taller. But I feel like the transitions just are smoother in the Novablast 5 across a larger variety of uses. So I think if you're looking for daily training and easy miles, the Novablast probably still wins here. But for being at the same weight, if you're looking to pick up the pace a little bit, the Sonicblast does really well. And this shoe's going to retail at $180, which I think is it's a good price for what it can do. And the Novablast being right where it has been, right in that $140, $150 range. So both are excellent shoes, and I think both can get the miles done. But I think if I'm choosing daily miles or just kind of easy walk, run, I'm probably leaning more toward the Novablast. If you're looking for things that are a little bit more snappy, a little bit speedier, I'm going to lean more towards the Sonicblast. But you could still do that in the Novablast. So it's a muddy situation where the two shoes are similar enough, but still different enough to be different lines entirely. And so being at the same weight, more stack, more resilient foam, snappier forefoot. If you're trying to go fast, I'm probably going to go Sonicblast over the Novablast. But all around for easy daily miles, I might still be leaning Novablast on this one. So that's our comparison video between the ASICS Sonicblast and the ASICS Novablast 5.